Should Arne Slot get the sack? Or is it unfair to part ways with a manager who won the league in his first season in England, just because things have started going the wrong way? A lot of you have asked for our opinion on the manager, and that is exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. Is Slot really as good as everybody thought he was? Or should the club already be looking at other options because we are simply delaying the inevitable? Before we get into it, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons, and let's jump straight into the video. To really understand whether Slot is a top manager or simply out of his depth, we need to look at the problems that his team has had this season and ask one simple question: how much of this is actually down to the manager? And the first and probably the most obvious issue we have faced all season long is set pieces, both defensively and offensively. So far this season we have conceded 13 league goals from set pieces at the time of recording this video. That puts us as the second worst team in the league when it comes to defending free kicks and corners, just one goal better than Bournemouth. We are level with West Ham and Crystal Palace, and we have conceded 2 more set piece goals than Nottingham Forest. Simply put, our ability to deal with crosses into the box has been nothing short of relegation level, and the problems do not stop there. Because as bad as we are defending set pieces, we are just as poor when attacking them. Up to now, we have scored just 3 league goals from set plays, with only 4.83 expected goals created from them. Take a guess where that puts us in the league. Dead last. In a time where set pieces decide tight games and can even decide titles, we are statistically the least dangerous team in the league from these situations. That is a massive problem, and it raises serious questions about preparation, coaching, and whether this team is being set up properly. Now, does Slot take the blame for this? Well, yes and no. The manager has spoken multiple times about how poor we have been from set plays, so it's not like he was unaware of the problem. He even said at one point that within this level of set piece form, we would not get anywhere near the top 4. That already tells you he knows how serious the problem is. Another important thing to mention is the set piece coach, Aaron Briggs, who was let go at the end of last year. Because of that, whether we scored or conceded from a set piece earlier this season, Slot should have not taken full credit or full criticism for it, because it technically was not his direct job. But does that mean he carries no responsibility at all? Absolutely not. Every coach on the staff reports through the first team coaching structure, and that structure is led by Slot. The focus in training, the routine we work on, and the defensive and attacking assignments all come from a coaching team that he oversees. So it is clear this situation sits in a bit of a grey area. That being said, there is at least one positive sign. Since Briggs was removed from his role, we still have not conceded a goal from a set piece. So maybe Slot and his staff decided to take matters into their own hands and finally started fixing the issue. Let's knock on wood and hope it stays that way. Now the second issue we're going to dive into is nothing less than the set piece problem. In fact, it might even be worse, because this one affects us in open play. The issue falls completely on Slot and the way he wants his team to defend. Whether we line up in a 4-2-4 out of possession or a 4-4-2, there are 2 clear principles that Slot wants his team to follow. The problem is that when you combine these 2 ideas, you naturally become vulnerable, and teams have clearly started to exploit this over and over again. The first principle is maintaining a +1 on the defensive line. In simple terms, if the opposition attack with 3 players, we want all 4 defenders staying deep to keep the extra man at the back. The issue with this approach is that it stops us from going man to man when the situation calls for it, especially higher up the pitch. That lack of flexibility creates space in dangerous areas, and as we will explain in a moment, it has been costing us badly. The second issue is what happens when we defend in a mid-block. Our midfielders are instructed to defend the man instead of defending space. So when the opposition starts rotating and moving players around, midfielders like Gravenberch and McAllister get dragged all over the middle of the pitch. That movement pulls them out of position and leaves big pockets of space behind them, which teams are more than happy to exploit. Once those spaces appear, the opposition have multiple options. A striker can drop into midfield to receive the ball, a winger can drift inside, or even a fullback can move into those central areas to get on the ball. And this is exactly where mixing the two principles we talked about earlier starts to hurt us badly. Because the back line is focused on maintaining that +1, our defenders are very reluctant to step out of line and follow players into midfield. So when the opposition rotate and always keep one less attacker than our defensive line, we simply do not jump forward to stop that pass. The result is opponents finding easy passes into dangerous areas with time and space to turn and attack us. This had already cost us a lot of goals this season. We saw it clearly against Galatasaray in the Champions League. As you can see here, they always had a free player sitting in midfield, and they were able to find him over and over again. No one from our back line stepped forward to close that space, while our midfielders were either pinned in place or dragged away by movement. The result was a simple pass into a dangerous area that we never properly defended. What makes this even more worrying is that this game was all the way back in September. And if you fast forward to our match against Fulham at the start of 2026, you see the exact same problems happening again. Same spaces, same movements, and the same lack of reaction from our defensive line. That tells you this is not just players making mistakes, but a structural issue that still has not yet been fixed. You can see how they first find the free man between the lines, and then use that to drag Gravenberch out of position to block the passing lanes towards Jimenez. That movement opens things up, and from there, everything happens very quickly. As we all know, Konate is not able to track the striker in time, who then flicks the ball back to Wilson. With no one close enough to react, Wilson finishes it and scores. This has been a recurring issue for us even going back to last season. Chelsea scored against us in a very similar way last year, and they managed to do it again in the current campaign. Slott's reasoning is that keeping a +1 at the back helps deny the opposition clear-cut chances. And to be fair, that can be true at times. But the problem is that once the opposition do manage to create a chance, it often feels more likely to be a goal than not. What makes this even more frustrating is that we have actually looked solid whenever we decided to defend in a more man-to-man way. The win against Aston Villa earlier this season is a great example of that, and the home win against Brighton also showed how effective we can be when we are more aggressive without the ball. Because of that, we believe this is something Slot needs to address soon if he wants to keep his job safe. Now, the third issue we are going to talk about is what happens when we have the ball, especially when we are trying to break down low blocks, and to be clear, breaking down a low block is not an easy task at all. In fact, it is probably one of the hardest things to do in modern football, especially in the Premier League. Even top teams like Arsenal and Manchester City struggle with it, because most teams are happy to sit deep and force play out wide. Now, in our case, does Slot deserve the blame for our struggles against the low blocks? To answer that, we first need to look at the players he had at his disposal. From the start, it was clear that Slot inherited Klopp's squad, a squad that was built for direct, fast and explosive football. That is exactly how we won the league last season, with Slot playing to the strengths of the players he already had. This season though, the situation feels different. We might simply not have the right profiles to break teams down slowly and patiently the way we want to. Players like McAllister, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch and Gakpo all thrive in chaotic games where transitions are constant and playing direct suits them best. But against deep and settled blocks, our midfielders often lack the passing range and, more importantly, the pause needed to control the rhythm and slow the game down. At the same time, our wingers, especially Gakpo, do not really have the top level 1 versus 1 quality to consistently beat defenders and force openings. Even our marquee signing, Alexander Isak, who unfortunately picked up an injury, is used to playing in teams that rely heavily on transitions rather than slow build-up. That leaves us with just 3 players who truly excel in combination play: Hugo Ekitike, Florian Wirtz, and Curtis Jones. We saw it clearly against Wolves how getting these 3 close to each other can help us break down low blocks. They have the quick feet, the ability in tight spaces, and the passing quality needed to unlock defenses. But the problem is that 3 players are simply not enough. As we saw against Leeds, they were able to shut this trio down on the left side by overloading the area and being extra aggressive. Now, we can agree that the players we have do not really suit this patient style of play, and while that is true, Slot still is not completely free of blame, because he knows this and yet continues to play in a way that does not fully suit the squad he currently has. The big question then becomes this: is he at least giving these players the right tools to help them succeed? And to be fair, there are actually some signs of good coaching. Yes guys, before you start booing us, let us explain. If we look at the same game against Leeds, you can clearly see that the team was set up in the right shape, with the right patterns to progress the ball forward and try to unlock their block. From wide overloads to diagonal passing lanes to simple up, back and through movements, the players' initial positioning and movement in these sequences were all positive signs of solid coaching from the manager. However, this is also where the issue of player suitability becomes even clearer. When it comes to the final decision, the execution just is not there. Szoboszlai not spotting or not being able to play the through pass, Gravenberch choosing to shoot instead of switching the play, these are all examples of poor decision making and execution from the players themselves, rather than the structure failing them. So when you look at everything we have talked about today, the answer is not as simple as yes or no. Slot is clearly not a perfect manager, and there are real tactical issues that need fixing, both in and out of possession. Some of these problems fall on him directly, while others come down to the players he has available and their limitations. It's also weird how he used his players to their strengths last season, while doing the opposite in this campaign. But at the same time, there are also clear signs of good coaching and ideas that do make sense even if the execution is not always there. That is why this conversation is so important right now. Are we judging Slot too harshly because results have dipped, or are there warning signs that should have not been ignored? Should the club stay patient and allow him to adapt the system to the squad, or should Slot be the one adapting to the players he has right now? And if things do not improve, how long is too long to wait? Let us know what you think in the comments. Does Slot deserve more time, or are we just delaying the inevitable? That's it from us today, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.